I had a splendid voice. In fact, I'd sing in opera if they'd give me my choice. I wrote to Oscar Hammerstein that I would be his star. He said, come down and sing for me, and I'll see how good you are. And I don't suppose I'll do it again for months and months and months. No, I don't suppose I'll do it again for months and months and months. I sang the wise old owl, and he left the room at once. So I don't suppose I'll do it again for months and months and months.
Welcome back to episode 3. My guest this time around is film director Richard Waters. On the 13th of October, his latest feature film, Advent, will have its world premiere at the Newport Beach Film Festival. It will also have its Irish premiere at the Richard Harris Film Festival at the end of the same month. Richard first hit our screens with the Irish indie cult film The O'Briens. Since then, he has explored the medium of filmmaking through a number of independent features that have exceeded each other. In this episode, Richard tells us where his passion for cinema began, his career to date, and what his dream project or projects would be if he was given a budget to his suiting. If you want to check out more about Richard and his latest movie Advent, you can do so by clicking on any of the links I have posted in the body of the podcast description. Also, if you like what you hear, please like and share it. If you know someone who would be interested in any of the topics on the podcast, please send them the link. But first up, and without further ado, here's Richard Waters.
What's the best way to describe what you do or what you're best known for at this particular stage?
I guess we can take it as maybe director would be either director or filmmaker, because I do edit an awful lot of things as well. But I guess, director is probably a bit more interested in just hearing about the TV stuff.
How did you get an interest in making film?
I don't know, I think it's just probably just too much TV when I was a kid. I mean, there's no sort of big touchstone where I was watching a movie and went, oh my God, that's it. That's what I want to do or whatever. I've always just been fascinated by movies. And I remember growing up, I watched an awful lot of things. I remember watching, say, Terminator 2 and Aliens on repeat nonstop, and then really getting into Ghostbusters and Gremlins, and just kind of really being fascinated by these films that were so beyond the world, beyond what is what's real. And then just as I started getting a bit older, kind of, I remember when I was probably about 12 or 13, we got a video camera into the house and kind of realizing like, oh, we can actually use this to make our own movies now, and getting a few friends together and making these kind of crappy little films around the place that were a lot of fun to do, and just kind of realizing, you can make the story there. Like I was always creative, I was always into drawing, I was always into writing, and I just felt it was another extension onto that. And it kind of grew from there. When I was a teenager, I was trying to do these things, trying to gather people, and I look back now and it's mad the amount of people I could actually convince to be in these films they were all absolutely rubbish, but they were a lot of fun. And thinking about the amount of people who actually have been in these things throughout the years is just absolutely insane when I think about it now. When you think about how hard it is as you get older to even just get people together for a drink or whatever, I was able to corral these groups to make these films back when they were teenagers.
We've heard this before, like if you take Spielberg and you take the Coen brothers, these homemade movies played a huge part in their progression as filmmakers and as writers and as producers. And they were quite varied in genre. They'd always do a different movie that they really liked each time around. Did you do that variety as well? Or were you locked into a certain genre and you said, well, that's my thing, that's what I really love doing? Or did you play around with it?
I've always been really more into kind of the horror side of things, so it's always been a lot more in that side. Now, when you're making them with your friends, when you're a teenager and all, they tend to be a bit more tongue-in-cheek and a bit more kind of crack, and like as time went on, I've certainly done other things. Like my first feature film I did, well, I made one when I was a teenager. I made a feature film that also not very good, but it's a feature film, and it was more drama than anything else. It was kind of like something like Requiem for a Dream, but by way of Dawson's Creek or some of that maybe. And then even though I was making experimental short films and things like that, and the first proper feature film I did was a rom-com, which was The O'Briens. But after that, more recently, I've been kind of more focusing on the horror, which is the things I always wanted to do. I was always trying to chase horror scripts and trying to do those. But even when I started out, those are the kind of films I was always into. Again, like I was always into fantastical ideas. And it's not necessarily that it's about being a horror film, it's just more about the fact that they are fantastical, that it's a world out there that's not, necessarily based in logic, or it's not necessarily based in, the everyday. It's something a bit more exciting. It's something a bit more unusual. And I mean, obviously, like a lot of films can do an awful lot, can bring an awful lot without being, fantastical. But for me, I find that you can have a very interesting story while also having these ideas that are just out there and really, get your brain popping.
Hmm. So the horror movies, that's always features in a filmmaker's interests. Most filmmakers will always kind of go, I love horror movies. What were the horror movies that got you going?
Well, I mean, again, the kind of gateway ones would have been things like Gremlins and Ghostbusters. I know Ghostbusters not very horror, but Poltergeist definitely was a huge one because that always terrified me, and
Mhm.
Poltergeist 2 and 3 as well. And then seeing Jaws at a young age. As time went on, though, starting to kind of really see things getting into, A Nightmare on Elm Street and things like that. Really, I guess an awful lot of it was actually probably on the 80s horror films. And when I became a teenager, I started really chasing out a lot of them. Like, I'd really tried to find the most extreme things I could, which at the time, you're talking about your like Day of the Dead is my one of my absolute favorite films. Dawn of the Dead. Then you're thinking of things like Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Cannibal Holocaust. All these kind of, some of them a bit more extreme than others, and at the time were very difficult to track down. We're just kind of getting a different flavor of the world out there because at that point, like we didn't have, we had terrestrial TV and a very poor signal from Channel 4 and stuff like that. So the films that I was seeing, were very kind of, what RTE would show maybe during the mid 90s. So a lot of things were kind of, maybe not incredible. Channel 4, I always remember actually watching Candyman on Channel 4, but it was a very broken up signal. Like it was black and white, it was very static. And I think that just kind of added to the mystique of it. It's just like this film that I heard, like kind of heard whispers about how creepy it was, or and about the candy, there's candy in it that has razor blades in it, and I mean, when I watch the film now, it's all fairly, it's a story or whatever. It all makes sense. It's made by a filmmaker. But when you watch it through that lens when you're younger and don't understand things quite as much, it feels very dangerous. And I think that was kind of the real nice side to all that I really was chasing out. Um, yeah, it's just that kind of, again, like chasing the thing. Like even now, like I'm a big fan of found footage films, and like one of the films features I've made is a found footage. And I mean, it comes again out of that want of trying to chase things being unusual, or things that feel a bit more realistic. The more, and it goes back actually when you talk about things being fantastical, say like Gremlins and all that. Everything's out there, but the more you can make a film feel realistic, which I think found footage is probably the easiest way to make something feel realistic. You break down the barrier between the audience and the filmmakers, and suddenly it's like, is this real? Is this not? I mean, I remember back when the Blair Witch was coming out, I was young, but so I could never see it in the cinema. But the talk of, was this a real film, or was it something put together? And that's the kind of thing. I think there's just something so inspired about that that kind of, it's a real campfire story kind of feel of like, no, no, that's not true. That's not true. Or is
it? Yeah. What is it about horror that hooks the audience in? I had one of my friends on the last time, Zoe Kavanagh, who directed Taron Barker Demon Hunter, and
it? Yeah.
I asked her the same question. Horror is like a massive, massive audience. What is it about it that draws people in?
I think an awful lot of people, a lot of people who would consider themselves maybe misfits or whatever, would find themselves really drawn to it. Like, I mean, I know growing up, like I wasn't this very sporty kid. I didn't live near the other kids in my school or anything like that. And these stories, these flights of fancy, really kind of drew me in an awful lot. And now as I go, I go on to I go to things like Fright Fest an awful lot, and I see the community of people who are into these films. And it's, again and again, you see the same kind of thing. You see people who are, who might be kind of considered by a lot of people, if they're walking by, a pub or whatever, you might have people yelling stupid things at them. But whereas with horror, it's more about inclusion, or it tends to be more about inclusion. It tends to be more about bringing people together, for that shared experience of, the moment of a horror film. I mean, the only other genre of film that kind of has something like that is comedies. But people don't really have festivals for comedy films. It's all more about the horror films because I guess, they're a little less accessible by everyone. And, everyone likes to kind of have a bit of a niche. Everyone likes to think the thing that they like, maybe not everyone else likes, even though horror is huge. It's like, it's worldwide. The amount of people I meet, like, that I've talked to and that I've connected with related to it, it's like, it feels like it's a never ending stream of people. And which is kind of one of the nice things is that, it's not a closed off circuit. But it's funny, when I was young, I mean, the internet, like, we didn't have broadband in our area until as well into my teenage years. Um, so finding out about films or finding people who like films like that was a lot harder to do. And again, I felt like maybe a little bit like the outsider with it. I was into my heavy metal and I was into my horror films. And then, but then when things like the internet came around, you start realizing there's more people who are into these things. Or when I was like chasing out these films, going beyond, like I live in the Bray area, going beyond Bray Cinema to places like Dunleary or into town where they had more interesting films screening. You start realizing, you start meeting the people who are enjoying these films, and you start seeing a kinship with them. I think there's a huge amount of the draw to horror film is community for people who really get into it. I mean, there's tons upon tons of Facebook groups of people who are just, there for the love of horror. And I feel like, the people I connect with online are all pretty much people who are horror fans. Even if, we might like message back and forth about different things, but we always have a base of horror, as our touchstone.
I don't think people will appreciate how big the horror film range is in Ireland. A lot of horror movies are made in Ireland independently. Can you describe the size of it for our listeners? Because many of them wouldn't be aware of it.
It's huge. And the Irish are very good for this in general, of like kind of seeping into pretty much everything, because I think pretty much everything out there has an Irish contingent that just love it. But like horror film, it's absolutely huge. And I mean, you look at some of the films that are coming out of Ireland, some of the filmmakers like Conor McMahon kind of stands, I think, head and shoulders above in a lot of ways. Um, the films are just like, there's so many people coming out with these great films. And like, just whenever you see festivals happen. So say again, like, obviously we have the Horathon in the IFI, which is very well attended. But say when I go to Fright Fest, which is over in London, you'll get a lot of Irish people travel over for that because it's a bigger festival.
Mm-hmm.
But no matter where you go, if you look at again the comments of anywhere on social media, you'll see plenty of Irish people getting their words in about things. You'll see plenty of them wondering, like, why say like boutique labels like Arrow, when they're trying to get their films delivered from the UK over to Ireland, that kind of hassle certain things. You always see the Irish contingent come out, and to say like, I think Irish people on Irish turf tend to be quite reserved about going out and doing things. Or, I don't know if we're all bothered to kind of, go out and, go to the festivals or go to like, the screenings or whatever. We don't tend to have these marathon screenings of films in the same way that the UK might do. Um, Whereas, in certain places like UK and America, I feel it's tangible how different the audiences actually go out and react to these things. But I do think what you do find is you find a lot of Irish people traveling from here over to places like to London to, say, the Prince Charles Cinema, and going to like all-nighter screenings, seeing these marathons of films. And it's, I don't, a lot of people obviously know, Irish people in general obviously know horror films. Everyone would know something. But one of the things is we're a huge cinema going, population really. Um, and so, I mean, we're just very cine literate in general. And I think a lot of people maybe give a bit more of a casual attitude than, they might actually realize that, certain horror films that people kind of just take for granted as like, oh yeah, that whatever, that Scream thing or whatever. There's certainly not all the cultures where they really know all these films. When I talk to my mom, she's not a horror person, but like she's very aware of like Texas Chainsaw Massacre and The Exorcist and things like that. That's kind of what we have, I think, over here.
Okay, so you've made a couple of horror films. How did you get into filmmaking? I think that's a question people always kind of get intrigued by when you talk to filmmakers. Like,
Yeah.
what were your first tentative steps towards this particular career path or vocation, maybe?
Yeah, well, I think it's definitely something that you kind of feel compelled to do because, like I say earlier on, like we got a camera and that kind of initially spurred me on. Like I remember the very first thing I ever made with the camera was with a Freddy Krueger toy, which is on the shelf here somewhere behind me. Just with the camera, walking around it with some version of Angel by Massive Attack playing, and kind of seeing like, it's not a movie, but basically that could be, that's the general basic of you have your character, you have a camera movement, you've got moody lighting, and you have a soundscape. I'm kind of going like, okay, so I'm starting to learn what a film is. And like someone gifted me the Guerrilla Filmmakers Handbook around the same time when they realized I was getting into these things. I got my friends together. I had no way of editing films, so we just had the camera. It was like, we'd do a movement or whatever. We'd stop the camera, move camera position, move people getting ready for the next part, go stop, do next thing. So it was editing in camera. Eventually, I was able to move on and get like a Firewire port put on my computer, so I was actually able to do some very, very basic editing, which opened up the world of just trying these things. And it was just a case of I just figured like, why can't I do this? You know, I have a camera, I have people who will do it. You're hearing, remember 28 Days Later at the time came out, which was shot on like mini DV cameras. Um, Obviously a very, very different setup than what I had, but ignorant me didn't really kind of care too much about that. I was doing all these things. I tried probably 2 or 3 times to make a feature film, and they all kind of just fell apart. I got like 2 days shot in them or whatever, so they just became little short films. Until like one summer, I did make a feature film with some friends. That is like, I think it's like a 90-minute film, and it's out there somewhere online. But then it was really, I knew that this is what I wanted to do, and I went to try to go to college. I tried to go to the National Film School in Ireland for it. I didn't get around for the year of the first go of that, and they suggested doing a portfolio year. So I ended up going out to Bray Institute of Further Education, which I ended up sticking with for the entire run and getting a degree in, because I just really liked the freedom that they gave there. It was very hands-on. The tutors were incredible. The people, the class I was with in particular, just happened to be very motivated people. I went in expecting a lot of people to be maybe very, for lack of a better term, kind of art wankers or film wankers, who just, would sort of sit around all day going back through photos and stuff like that. But there was none of that. I mean, everyone was just into films, into things that they enjoyed, into things that were cool, introducing each other to different films, and wanting to do things. When we made our films and made our projects throughout the years there, it was great fun. Um, and then eventually, when we wrapped up with that, um, one of our tutors, he had shown us, he'd made mock trailers for 2 feature films that he was trying to get funding for. And basically, one of them, me and my now wife, who was my producer, we saw the trailer and we saw the script and thought, like, we can make this. It was like, if we had a bit of money, we could make this. And he ended up getting someone who invested €4,000, which obviously is not very much, but €4,000, it's better than nothing. And just between, basically, our old tutor Michael directed. My wife was producing, I was assistant directing. Some other former students were doing the camera work. Michael had connections for some actors. We put out casting calls, and we made a film called Sodium Party, which is basically like a David Lynch film in Ireland. And it was insane. When did we shoot that? 2010 is when we shot that. Kind of around August in 2010. And it is insane when I look back now, the amount of people we had in it, the amount of locations we had in it, and we shot it over about 20 days, I think. And we did like a proper film. It was lights, cameras, sound, moves around. We have crew. I mean, it was a small enough crew and all that kind of thing, but it was a lot going on in it. And then it took us a while to put it together. We had a lot of problems getting editing going on it. We had different people that we tried to hire in. We went to the UK to get someone to do it initially as well, who ended up not being no good. And then we just realized that maybe I should edit. Excuse me, maybe I should edit it, which is what happened. So I sat in Michael's bedroom cutting the film for about half a year or so. And eventually we put it out in 2013. We released it. It was at the inaugural Indie Cork Film Festival, which was great fun. And around the same time, actually, well, I guess the year before, well, I might be wrong about when Indie Cork was, but it was around that time this was all happening. The star of Sodium Party, Slaney Kelly, was doing another film called The O'Briens, which is a rom-com. And she asked Ali, my wife, slash producer, if she could produce that film. And Ali, because she was young, she said, like, I'll kind of co-produce with other people. So, and I was going to go on as editor, definitely editor on that one. And I was just there to be an extra set of hands on the set. And then when we started going at that film over in Galway, things just kind of got a bit mad. And one thing led to another, and it ended up working out that I ended up directing the film. And that film, when it was finished, it ended up doing quite well for itself. Got brought around. I went to America a good few times, went to a lot of festivals, and we went with it. And then that was kind of that's what I consider the first feature film. Although as time went on, like I did another one relatively recently that a lot of press releases and all that call it the first one, even though I don't know how that happened. I never said it, but listen, like if it gets into festivals and gets into publications, whatever, I'm not going to stop them.
Yeah, I don't think people appreciate when people go to the cinema and they see the movie, they go, "Wow, that's great! Wow, what a career!" I don't think people fully appreciate how hard and arduous it is to take an idea from its seed to when it ends up on the screen. Yeah, can you give us an insight as to what that might be like for a filmmaker? Because I'd say it's pretty common. It's not an isolated thing. It's across the board here on this.
Yeah, no, like I mean, trying to think of across all the films at this point. So I think there's kind of 4 features we've done now, really. And pretty much all of them have the same exclusive issues of, they're all low budget and it's all the same. Typically you want to work, you have a script and you want to keep working on the script until it's right, you break it down. But the thing is, like, say with Sodium Party, I think that's a good example of Ali and Michael spent ages going through, breaking it down, figuring out all the things they needed. And then it was a case of we had to go and get these things sorted out. Like that film had, again, loads of locations. So we were kind of trying to figure out everywhere we had to go to do these things. Say, we shot something down in the Bog Meadow and in a scary. So because of that, I had to go to the guards there to get permission from them or make sure that they were aware that people were filming there. And so, no one would go like, oh, there's these people, a crowd of people down in the Bog Meadow causing havoc or something like that. Same for, there's like a kind of sex scene or kissing scene in a park in Greystones at nighttime, which did have the guards end up coming up and going, "What are you guys doing over there?" And I wasn't there at the time, and only found out afterwards that our director went to the guards like, "What are you guys doing over there?" It's like, "Oh no, it's okay. We're shooting an adult fairy tale." So thankfully we got to finish the scene off, so it's grand. But even things like, again, that one we had kids in it, which comes with, you can't overwork kids, and they have certain limitations most of the time that you have to be aware of. And they, their parents have to be involved as well, especially when it's low budget. You don't want, well, at no time in general can you just kind of separate a parent from the kid for these things. But you want everyone to feel safe and secure, even if it's a low budget thing, that everyone's being looked after. We had like things like a classic car, so we had to go look at classic cars, figure out where to find those, make a deal with someone that they come out and let us use their car for certain scenes and stuff like that. And just things like, someone was coming down from Northern Ireland to be in the film, and you have to figure out how to get people. So, basically, it's all chaos. Like you spend a lot of time trying to prepare things. You start trying to figure out, you look at the script, you figure out what order to put things in, you figure out, you know, it's not normally it's not best to shoot it in order. So, you don't do page 1, page 2, page 3 onwards. You normally change it around. So you might start shooting a scene that's in the middle of the script and then something from the very end and then shoot something from the very beginning because maybe your locations that you're using are in those parts of the script. You're more driven by location availability or actor availability. Then you're kind of figuring out your crew. You have to get people. If you don't have much money, sometimes you have people and then some days they can't do it because they have a job that they're getting paid a lot of money on and they can't be there for you. So you just have to either have you have to have a backup or else you have to, not shoot that day. Certain roles. Some people come in kind of as assistants or trainees or whatever, and if someone can't do something, say for sound, or one of our guys, he started off as a trainee, he ended up like being sound assistant. Then because our sound guy couldn't work a day, he ended up being the sound operator. He ended up then being basically a proper assistant director as well with me on it. And then he, after that film, he went on and had a great career doing all these different things. And I think he works over in Edinburgh in the Fringe and stuff like that now. It's just these kind of films they're kind of mad things because you sort of set everything up as best you can. You organize things as best you can with these things in mind. People's availability, people's issues, locations, timings, locations, issues, and then you have everything ready and set up. And then something comes along and completely messes up your entire plan, and you just have to deal with it and figure something out and work around it. So if you say have a scene that's set in a garden where the kids are on on the ground having tea or something like that on a rug and it starts raining, you obviously can't do that anymore. It doesn't make sense. If it's raining, why would they be sitting out there doing that? So you have to decide, like, okay, well, maybe they're, inside in the patio, or else maybe you can't do that scene at all. You have to do a different scene. These are the kind of things that, you kind of have to deal with and run with and figure out when you're making films. And I think across the board, I mean, these kind of things happen constantly. And I mean, it's all about, planning everything perfectly so it should go off without a hitch and then being ready to throw that entire plan out and just come up with another one right away on the spot.
Sounds like there's a lot of improvisation. We often hear of improvisation on the screen. We're always told about it, but I don't think we're that aware of how the script can go out the window automatically.
Yeah.
5 minutes in.
Yeah. Now, some people are big sticklers on this is how it has to be. This is the only way we can do it. I'm a little bit more flexible. I always think that if you have the spirit of what you're doing, it's right. Like when we did the O'Briens, and not to spoil it too much, but at the end of it, there's a scene where a guy is in a car driving away from a woman that she's like, it's a will they, won't they? And he's driving away, and then basically it cuts. She goes into a pub, and then he's there. It's a big, nice, heartfelt moment. But in the original script, he's in the car driving away from her. She's sad. She walks off, and he goes, arrives at the airport. He's walking along with his other girlfriend, and there's an entire conversation and things like that. In an airport, he decides, no, I'm staying and going back and all this kind of thing. And basically, I remember when we were doing it, I just decided that, like, we don't really need that stuff. Like, that's all superfluous. It also requires us to go and shoot in an airport, which it doesn't matter if you kind of go like, oh yeah, no, it's grand, we can shoot down there, it'll be fine. You have to have permission for these things. You have to have people who know what you're doing or are okay with what you're doing if you're going to be doing something significant. I mean, guerrilla filmmakers do steal shots here and there. They do things, that maybe they shouldn't do or whatever. But, for the most part, it's always harmless things. But if you're trying to do a proper scene, you're going to need to kind of have a little location. You're going to be in people's way. You can't really do that without proper, proper organization and proper plans in place. And we didn't have that on the film because we just didn't have the budget. We didn't have the time for it. And I just realized that, if we lose that entire chunk of him realizing in the airport that he didn't need to do all this stuff, if we just pull that all out, it's much more powerful. If he's driving off, we think he's gone. If he goes, sits in the pub, and then suddenly he's there, and it's just like, exactly what's going on. You don't need that other stuff there. It's much more. And in fact, without a doubt, it works better. In fact, I remember the moment that I realized it, and I can remember a song. It's a Roisin O song that we used in it. And I remember thinking like that song would be perfect for this moment because of the way the song kicks in. This is not only is this a perfect moment, it's a perfect way to actually bring the film to a close. And basically it all worked out so perfectly. And again, that's how these things go. Sometimes you'll have a huge scene. I mean, you always hear like anecdotally about in Indiana Jones and Raiders of the Lost Ark, there's a scene where he's fighting with the guys in the marketplace, or whatever, and then one of the guys comes out with the knives. He's doing a big thing with it, and then Indiana Jones takes the gun up and just shoots him. So apparently he was supposed to have a proper fight scene with him that day, but Harrison Ford had like diphtheria or something like that, so couldn't do anything. And I was just like, why don't I just pull up the gun and shoot him and that's it? And it's an iconic and great moment. I mean, sometimes you lose things you like, but most of the time you'll come up with a clever solution. I mean, limitations really bring out the best in people and filmmakers and in artists, really.
Yeah, it must really get you thinking outside the box. The filmmaking. I suppose that when you're in the sphere or in the box of independent filmmaking, and you have to think outside the box, that's a transferable skill you can take out, say, then into your private life as well. I presume it's like it's something that you can use everywhere. It's not just limited to independent filmmaking.
No, not at all. Yeah, you definitely really think about things around the world around you. Now, I mean, I work in like TV and film and stuff like that as well, so it kind of helps that I have to think around solutions that way. But if you have an issue, if you have a timing issue, you're figuring out how to coordinate people. Say like when me and my wife got married, we didn't find the wedding a huge operation in a way to sort out because it was basically like organizing a day of a film. And I guess in a way that's kind of it's kind of true though, is you're organizing a load of people in a location and have a timing that you're trying to stick to. And some things work out, some things don't, and you just have to kind of get over the speed bumps of it.
Okay. So when you finish a project, do you kind of go, well, that's me done for a couple of months. I'll think about the next thing. Or are you automatically bang looking for the next thing? Or are you
Oh, if only I could be one of those people who just like that's it, bang, done. No, I'm always about trying to do something more. In fact, like and sometimes that's a problem that like I think a lot of creative people have is you have an idea and then you kind of want to be doing the next thing when the idea you're doing you come up against the hard part. So I've edited the feature films that we've done, and there's always a point in that where it just becomes a bit of a slog, or you're kind of getting a bit tired with it, and you kind of start thinking about the next thing. So say we've just actually gone picture lock on a new film, but for a huge amount of that post production time, I've just been kind of thinking about other ideas and kind of coming up with like treatments and scripts for the next ones, basically. But all the time, it's like at the same time I'm doing that, I also have other scripts and treatments that I've kind of prepared before. It's like I've kind of put those into the drawer kind of away because I'm not as interested in those at the moment as I am about these other ones I'm looking at, while also remembering, no, I have to remember that I'm working on finishing off this film that we're doing now. And it's just it's very when we did the O'Briens, like that, like I said earlier, that went well. Like we ended up kind of going around, especially to the States with that. It ended up on Aer Lingus and things, and I thought it was going to lead to a certain area with a career where I might get kind of funding, excuse me, where I might get funding for films, and I might it might be easier to actually get a film going. And I had these ideas, I had these scripts, and my team as well, who I work with, and we were hoping that these things would happen. And basically, it just didn't. We were chasing these things for a long time. I got connected with films that were, when I was asked to do them, I was told that like, the budgets were there and the things were happening, and then it turned out that was not true. And we did that film. It came out in 2013. That's when everything kind of exploded with it. And then basically, just for 5 years, nothing was happening. And it took, me and my wife going to Fright Fest I remember, I think it was probably 2018, with an idea of hers. We were kind of invited to kind of a writing workshop kind of thing with some horror icons, and that was what kind of really like spurred me on again. Gave me the spark of like, I'm sick and tired of waiting for someone to tell me that I can do this. I'm sick and tired of waiting for someone to give me the opportunity to do this. I know we can do this. We've done it twice before at that point, not including the things I'd made before I did those films. And it was just a case of, I just got to get out of the comfort zone and just do it. That's when I ended up making the found footage film, which I ended up making for by myself, almost entirely by myself, for €30, and that's all it was. And it was just me, like in love with the idea of doing that kind of thing. And I thought, like, look, if I do it and it doesn't go well, whatever, it won't see the light of day. It's grand. I'm the only one who's going to feel any effect from it. But then, I did it. The first few things I did in it, I really liked, and then I decided like I'm going to keep doing it. I'm going to finish it off as a proper film. I did, and I put it out on Halloween. And a couple of months later, it really kicked off. It found an audience in a quite a big way. And it showed me, like, I did that for all the right intentions. And I mean, I still love the film. And I love found footage things in general. Um, and that, led to us being able to do our next one, which was Bring Out the Fear, which has gone very well for us. We got to premiere at that at Fright Fest, which is the same festival that I've gone to all these years. And we went to that script seminar thing with. And it just, I mean, it's that kind of thing of you're believing in yourself, you're pushing yourself to do these things. Like, I mean, I'm not some sort of outlier on this. I mean, I see some people who are extremely creative who can do incredible things, and I see, especially in the Irish industry, I see a lot of people who are great who maybe get sidetracked because of the fact that we don't have a big film industry. We have Screen Ireland, who are a government body, and if you're relying on them, it's very easy to get really bitter because you're waiting for them to give you money. And they only have so much. They're a government body, they have certain boxes they need to tick, and certain ways that they work that maybe don't kind of suit just a general film industry. Maybe they're more a cultural industry almost. Whereas say the UK has a bit more, like a lot more film production companies. So but sometimes again, deciding, screw that, I'm just going to go off, make my thing. I made my film for €30. I made the next one for more than €30, but not much more, for about the same as the Sodium Party, basically. And again, just kind of betting on yourself to do these things. If it goes wrong or if it doesn't go well, like, what's the worst thing can happen is, like, a film that's either, hopefully you get a finished film that, and, if people don't like it, that's, whatever. If people do like it though, I mean, that's great.
Yeah. And do you find with each release that you're beginning to gather an audience for your films? Like, people will associate your name with a certain genre, or is that something that's kind of creeping in, maybe?
Yeah, I do think there's a bit of that. I really think with In a Stranger's House, which is the found footage one, because I'm the star of that one. Like, it's like I say, €30. The casting budget was nil, so it was just me doing it. And I've have a lot of people who've connected with me online, who send me messages online because of that film. When we did Bring Out the Fear, I don't know if people really connect me and In a Stranger's House, or and the two films together, but people are aware that I do these horror films. People are aware of Bring Out the Fear. I have a lot of people who connect with me now who are waiting to see what the next thing's going to be. Who are there, and I'm very approachable online and stuff like that, because why wouldn't I be? So I have, I mean, no one's like approaching me in the street or anything like that, and I don't think that's going to happen in general. But I think it's like those two films in particular, because they're both horror films and they both, they work for their audiences, well, for certain audiences anyway. That for the next ones, we can kind of go from the makers of these two films, and it'll mean something to someone. And I think that's pretty, important. Like, it's good to have work we can stand behind. For me, when we make these things, obviously, it's, my name's on there, so it's important to me that it's well done that way. But also, all the people who say act in it and are crew on it and who've done something with it, their names are all on it too, and you want it to be the best thing it can be for them, really.
That's great. Does the with regards the actual film industry itself, have you found that it's kind of maybe not so much open doors, but at least unlocked, and you're able to kind of get an answer, or you
Um,
know,
to a
with
degree.
regards?
Now, I mean, it's a bit easier, I guess, when you have something to kind of be walking around with. Like, say we Bring Out the Fear, I was able to, when that got into Fright Fest, like, that was opening an awful lot of doors to places. Went from Fright Fest to Horathon to Screen Fest in the US, and I was able to get to sales agents and stuff like that, and talk to a lot of different distributors and things. But at the same time, I mean, you always hear like, budgets are getting smaller and smaller. People don't really have the money to throw around and things. A lot of places like to be able to get a film, early doors, or films that are, on the small side, pay a little bit of money for them and then put them out. And, everyone's very quiet about how much films actually make, which is like what all the strikes and all are kind of about really in America, I guess.
Mm.
Um, but I mean, you know, I don't think there's someone there, there's no one in suits, keeping the door closed, smoking their cigars behind the door and that. I think, if you go out there and you try and make these films, and then you just say you go approach film festivals with them, try and be smart about that as well, because there is kind of predatory film festivals. But say things like the Underground Film Festival in Dublin, or the IFI or the Hearthon IFI and things. Like there's plenty of festivals around the world. Like I mean, there's more than Cannes, there's more than Berlin, all this kind of thing. There's loads of festivals that cater to a smaller audience or cater to kind of less known films, and that could be that's a good way of actually meeting people who might actually know like, you might know other people that will connect you, or even just generally meeting people is always nice anyway. Like with the O'Briens, we went to some festivals. Like one of them was called Dubuque International Film Festival, which I'd never heard of, but it was written up in Filmmaker or Movie Maker magazine as like one of the top 100 in the world, what worth the entry fee. And we had a great time, and we've been back with all of our films since. The cast who were in the O'Briens went back with another film of theirs recently. We're hoping to go back again soon. We're working on something with the festival director as well, separately from our feature films. And it's just, it's a connection, it's, at the end of the day, everyone's human, I mean,
Yeah.
no one wants to deal with someone who's, the stuck up, stubborn artiste about things. We like the O'Briens was someone else's project, and we kind of gave did our best with it to creatively do it the way we thought it would be good. We've just finished the film with some of the people who we did the O'Briens with, that is in the same boat where they wrote it, and we've kind of brought our kind of interpretation of their work to try and be the best that it can be. And it's a different experience than like making a film that you've written yourself, but it's not to say it's a bad experience or a worse experience. It's just a different experience. And there's an entire world out there. Like, I mean, if I can do these things, anyone can really do these things. It's all about just kind of going out there and doing it. Like, there's a lot of people who are much more creative with a camera than I'm going to ever be. There's a lot of people who might have more clever stories than I'll ever come up with. And it's just always a case of, people who just don't give up at doing these things. I mean, that can be said for a huge amount of creative endeavors. I mean, how many people want to write a book and then maybe get 2 chapters in and realize, oh crap, this is work. And that's it. Just all these things like film is work. And but it's if if you have a passion for it, if you need to see things done, you'll get it done. You'll be able to get it out there. People want to see it, whether or not they love it or they want to run with it in some way. That's beyond the point. At least they know you, and if you like, make a nice impression as a human being, they're not going to like stop answering the call if you go like, oh, hey, 5 years down the line, I've got another different film, and this one I think is I think you might like this one. It's a bit different, or it's a bit bigger, or whatever. I mean, that's kind of how it works. All these people are human beings who love film and want to see these things.
Yeah.
I hope that gives some sort of good idea for that.
Yeah, no. You said something there that kind of got me thinking. You mentioned the film festivals and you mentioned the strikes, and like I'd be wanting to say I've kind of not gone to see a movie in the cinema in the last couple of months because I'm really bored by what the studios are putting out. Just lost interest. The Banshees of Inisherin was the last one I went to simply because I enjoy Martin McDonagh's work. Um, but now you've all these smaller festivals. Do you think we might see a bit of a resurgence like we did in the 80s and 90s of independent filmmakers making more interesting work?
I think the films are there. It's just no one's kind of looking for them or seeking them out really.
Hmm.
Like say Bring Out the Fear, the film we made, like that after Fright Fest and all that got picked up and like that's been released in like loads of places. But it's VOD, so it's you go onto Apple TV or whatever, and you pay your money for it, you rent it off YouTube or whatever. Um, I don't know, like I feel certain places like people just kind of need to kind of get that excitement for it. They need to know that there is these different films out there. Like a film festival can be a lot of fun. And I think some countries are a bit more inclined to do it well. Like some of the festivals in America in particular, when you go to these towns, they become the film festival. The crowd are all there. Everyone's basically coming out for it. It feels very, it embraces it. The town basically is a film festival for a while. I feel like maybe over here, Irish people don't kind of come out for these things nearly as much as we should in a lot of ways because I think Irish people in general have a lot more art in them, a lot more creativity in them. But we also maybe, I don't know, if there's just an element of like not wanting to kind of put ourselves out and go check these things out, for the worry that maybe some of it's going to be rubbish or whatever. Because festivals are like, they're a mixed bag. But yeah, I
Lack of
mean, like,
awareness, maybe. Would that be a lack of awareness? Because I mean, there's great film
definitely,
festivals, but no one seems to ever kind of cover them and kind of come down and go, right, I saw this movie.
yeah.
It's fucking brilliant. You gotta get this on the radios and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. Like, I mean, I didn't go to Galway, but I mean, when it was finished, I had to actively go out and find out, about the films that were in it and like the ones that won and stuff like that. I mean, I feel like that should be the kind of thing that's, when these things happen, it should be kind of there for everyone to know about. Everyone should be hearing about, like, oh, there's this film. What was that one? Apocalypse Clown was the one from that won. It's like, this one should be the one that's going around. Everyone should hear about this. It shouldn't have to be something that someone's chasing up to find out about. And I don't know, hopefully there'll be something to kind of change up. But I mean, at the moment, we're still in an age of, the streamers. Everyone's clicking on like your Netflix and Prime, and things are kind of easily, you pass by the thumbnail, or you give it 5 minutes and go like, oh, this is cheap rubbish, and just turn it off. You never give things a fair shake of the stick. I mean, how many things are getting missed? I mean, would Reservoir Dogs have ever been discovered, if it was in an age of streaming? I mean, there's an awful lot of films out there that people would not have given a chance if they were kind of released in the same climate that things are released today. Now, at the same time, the bar for entry is a lot lower than it used to be. There's a lot of things out there that probably a lot of people wouldn't find worth their time. There's also a huge amount of things that are definitely worth people's time that get like lost among the clutter.
Yeah, yeah. I seem to kind of becoming aware of that now. If you take what you mentioned the Fringe Festival earlier on in Edinburgh, and you do get that impression. At one time, it was a place where you could go and see a load of great shows, but the load of great shows are now lost amongst 100 other shows.
Yeah,
So the effect
it's
is not the same effect we used to have.
yeah. No, that's it. And I mean, in a way as well, you do have it's all kind of swings and roundabouts in a way because there's so much more things out there. There's a lot of good stuff getting lost because there's a lower bar of entry. But then there is also, there's communities out there of people like Facebook groups and on Twitter and stuff like that of people talking about these things. Like that's how I find out about a lot of films is through that or through podcasts or whatever. Um, and there's a huge amount to be said for that. And like I say, the fact we are in an age of connectivity, people can literally reach out to you mean let you know about these things. Or if someone sees your film and likes it or whatever, they might say, "Oh, remind me of this film," so you might go chasing that up and finding out about it. Or I have a big tendency, like there's certain films I like an awful lot that I constantly, whenever I get a chance, I'll always kind of go out and sing their praise, because I just think these are great films and I think people would enjoy them to see them more. So if I can even get a tenuous link to it, I'll always find a way to mention certain films out there.
Mhm.
And I don't think I'm certainly not alone in doing that. Yeah, it's just unfortunately, yeah, the bar for entry, yeah, there's a lot of diamonds getting lost in the rough, but
Yeah.
there is ways to find them.
Well, the sense I'm getting of it is that within the filmmaking community itself, there's a great camaraderie. There's a great group spirit, actively encouraging one another to check out films and all that.
But yeah, no, you mentioned actually, definitely though. You mentioned Zoe Kavner earlier on, and like I actually her film Demon Hunter. I ended up helping her kind of get the export of that finished and out of her computer. Well, we used mine and Ali's computer at the time. And again, we just connected online, and that's literally someone put up a post looking for some help, and we reached out and said, "Hey, we can help you out with that." Um, when Bring Out the Fear premiered at Fright Fest, we were part of a program called First Blood, I'm gonna say. So there was other filmmakers who had their films. It was basically their first kind of, well, I guess, kind of first Fright Fest feature film, and I'm still in like contact with those of the guys from that. Me in particular, one of the other guys, we really talked about like dealing with sales agents and distributors and things like that and deliverables, stuff that no one really likes to talk about or really gets very open about because there's a lot of secrecy about those kind of things. Anything to do with money or figures or whatever, there's always secrecy about. Um, and yeah, it's I haven't really met many people who have been kind of tough to talk to or tough to deal with. Most people have been very open about things. Most people are very much wanting to see other people succeed because they believe rightly that if other people are succeeding, it gives them a chance to succeed because I mean, a rising tide carries all boats up.
So you mentioned the sales agents then. So what do they do? They mentioned that you mentioned that a couple of times. What's their function in it all?
Yeah. So basically, when you make a film, a sales agent is someone who will take it on and go sell it to distributors around the world because that's why the filmmaker makes the film and then a distributor releases it. So and I mean they might be like get it sold to Netflix or whatever, or get it put into a cinema or whatnot. The sales agent basically takes our film and they go to different marketplaces. So the film technically screened in Cannes, and they take it to other markets. There was like somewhere in South America and stuff like that. And they go to different territories and they'll make deals. So say Bring Out the Fear, we made a deal. They made a deal with the Horror Collective to release our film, and they released it in US, UK, Canada, and Ireland. Germany was released by a different company who I think is called Splendid Film, and they released it on VOD and on DVD and Blu-ray. Then Scandinavia was a different deal, and then we have a few other deals that have happened or are happening. And so basically, connections we don't have with companies that we don't know. These people are going and making these deals. They're trying to get us the best offers. They're trying to also, because they have experience with it, they're making sure that we don't get screwed over. That someone doesn't go, okay, here's the film, and basically we're going to forever say that this screwdriver costs too much money for us to ever give you any return on your film. Now, I mean, independent films, again, like this day and age, you're not really making any money off it. You're basically paying for the film itself, but for me it's more important at this point that the film gets out there for people to see it. And our sales agents, Black Mandala is what they're called, have been very good. They've really got us to a lot of places that I don't think the film would have necessarily got to itself. Like I've self-distributed in a stranger's house, so like I didn't go to different countries or whatever. So it got released in the US and UK via Amazon, and again, like that connected very well with people. But a sales agent was able to get that out. Was able to bring out the fear to more people. So we have a lot more places that's going to come out over the next few months as well, that we never would have been able to reach or never would have been able to do. And it's just that's in a nutshell, that's what sales agents do.
So that must be a real awesome feeling to put all that work into it and then to see it on the screen. It must be a right adrenaline rush, is it?
Yeah, no, it's absolutely incredible. Like, I mean, Fright Fest for me was probably the one big thing was that, because that was a festival I was going to for so long and I loved it. I loved attending. The fact I remember getting the call about it and all was just incredible. But that kind of snowballed into other things like getting our deal. And it was Ed from Horathon was the one who connected us with Black Mandala, our sales agents. And we've been getting on great with them. They've been asking about our next things and all, kind of seeing if they can get in a bit earlier on with it as well. But like say Germany, like I'm like as you behind me is a whole pile of DVDs and Blu-rays, and one of them, well, actually two of them technically, is Bring Out the Fear, which was released in Germany, and it's an incredible feeling to kind of have the film come out and not have like we made a DVD for Sodium Party, but we bankrolled that ourselves. We made a limited run of that, whereas this one, a company made a deal with us. We've got a split with them or whatever, and they've put this out there. It's rated, it's for sale on Amazon and all the different sites in Germany. And so people are actively just finding it. Someone is going in, going like, "Oh, what's the new horror film? Oh, Bring Out the Fear. I've never heard this before. I'll give it a shot." And it's exciting. It's exciting to kind of get a film out there to new people, hoping that they'll see it, they'll enjoy it, they'll connect with you, or they'll just maybe follow on. Like when our next film's out, they'll go like, "Oh, I enjoyed that last film. I'm going to check out this new one." Because I mean, that's the big thing you're trying to do is you're telling stories and hoping people want to keep seeing the stories you're telling. And I mean, because we don't really stop, because we're constantly trying to do ones. Like we've got another film, like I say, Picture Lock. So we got that done. I'm already thinking of the next one. We don't stop and smell the roses too much with these things, but at the same time, I mean, we celebrate our victories. We're delighted the film has come out the way it has. That when the Horror Collective released it in January, that they put a bit of a push behind it, so it appeared on loads of websites and things. The film, if it felt a bit more real than say when I did it in a stranger's house. I put that out with no fanfare or any publicity or whatever behind it because I had no money. I put it out on like Amazon and stuff on Halloween, and I heard nothing about it until basically March the following year, when the numbers just started creeping up, and it was just people were discovering it and really getting into it. And then I found these Facebook groups that love found footage films, and they kept mentioning it in there. But again, that's the same thing. It's like you're finding out people are seeing your art and they're enjoying your art, and I mean, you can't. There's nothing better than realizing that people have connected and enjoyed the thing you've made the same way that you were intending it to be accepted.
Mm-hmm. What about what are you working on now? What's your project that you're
Well, we're finishing up. I can't say too much about it, but we're finishing up. I don't know. By the time maybe when the podcast comes out, it'll all be out there. But we made another feature film with I can say certainly Emmett Hughes from the O'Briens. We've made another feature film with him. We made it over in Galway last October, and hopefully by October it should be seeing its way into the world. We're picture locked, which means we finished editing it. Now we just need to get our sound stuff done and our color grade done, and all the other technical nonsense. So that's exciting, and we're working away at getting another film going, another cheapy, well, say cheapy, another low budget one. And we have a few less low budget ones that we're trying to push to get made, but that's the kind of one where hopefully someone will go like, oh, I enjoyed those other films. I believe if we give you more money, you'll be able to make this film well. But like I said, with the O'Briens, we waited around for that kind of thing to happen, and nothing happened. So even though we have a few ones like that with this, there's a couple of ones. There's one in particular that we'd love to do that with. We're not going to sort of sit around and wait for someone to give us money for those things. We're going to go, these are the ones up here. We would love to make those. We need X amount of money to make those happen, but we're going to try and make them happen. But while we're waiting on those, we have these ones down here that we can afford out of our own pocket that we're going to make. And we have these other ones here that we finished off that we just have a few little bits done. So they'll come out and people will hopefully watch and enjoy those, which might help, the ones on top, it might help kind of get those ones happening. And while the ones in the middle happen, while all these other things kind of scoot around. And then just these titles just kind of move around in different order, while you kind of keep making more films, hopefully.
So if I gave you a budget of 10 million, right? What would your dream project be?
Dream project. Now, I know I'd probably go for I'd definitely go horror route. No, actually, there is a property, funny enough, a comic book property, not a Marvel one though, that I would absolutely make. But I think, although I would love to be in that world of like the Texas Chainsaw Massacres, I would absolutely go ballistic with one of those, I think. And again, something like, even if they're ever to come back and do any more Nightmare on Elm Streets, like I think I'm Bring It to Fear has some good kind of bring some moments of that kind of thing, or actually even Blair Witch. Like I've been big into Silent Hill and Blair Witch for a long, long time. Bring It to Fear has an awful lot of both those in it, and I think Blair Witch is like something that would be, given the found footage and the kind of unreliable narrator that runs through some of the work. I think that would probably be what would end up being made. Or else a load of films for, 500,000, 20 films for 500,000.
So that wraps up the third episode of the new series. A big thank you to Richard Waters for taking time out of his busy schedule to talk to me. If you've enjoyed the episode, please like and share it with anyone who you think might be interested in its contents. We're back next Friday with a brand new episode. Until then, you've been listening to The Recluse's Cookbook, and I'm your host, Vinnie McHale.
My mother always told me that I had a splendid voice. In fact, I'd sing in opera if they'd give me my choice. I wrote to Oscar Hammerstein that I would be his star. He said, come down and sing for me, and I'll see how good you are. And I don't suppose I'll do it again for months and months and months. No, I don't suppose I'll do it again for months and months and months. I sang the wise old owl, and he left the room at once. So I don't suppose I'll do it again for months and months and months.